Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, June 2nd, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. Today, we're catching up with the Chiefs with beat writer Pete Sweeney and columnist Vahe Gregorian. The offseason training portion of the calendar is winding down, and after next week, the Chiefs will be off for their summer break. But in the past few days, we've gotten a glimpse of Patrick Mahomes at practice, wearing a brace over his left knee to protect from the torn ACL and LCL. We'll share what we've seen and project the timing of his return. So kind of some good news there. The not so good news, the status of wide receiver Rashee Rice. He's not with the Chiefs because, well, he's in jail. Rice is serving his 30-day sentence as part of his probation stemming from the 2024 arrest from his involvement in that car crash in Dallas. We'll discuss Rice and what this means for the wide receiver position group. And finally, I'll share what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. Hello, Vahe.
Hi, Blair.
Pete, how you doing?
I'm well.
Good, good. How about your Knicks?
Yeah, this is very exciting. I made a joke on the radio earlier, and I'll pass it along to the podcast, that in college, you don't really look forward to finals week, but this finals week is something I've been looking forward to. Yeah, there you go. For a long time. Yeah, this is very exciting. In the NFL, unbiased, I didn't even, and so, we're not really fans. This is like full fandom for me, so this is very exciting. Yeah. Go ahead, Blair. Sorry.
Where were you at the 1999 NBA Finals when these same teams met?
Well, that's what's funny. I think I was 12 years old. So you do the math. It's like a lifetime. I mean, I wasn't as hardcore of a fan back then because you're just starting to understand sports and what you like. And, and I grew to be a Knicks fan when my dad taken me as a kid. And so this is really the first run I've been able to have full appreciation of. And it's been so dominant. No team has ever done this as far as the point differential in 11 straight games. So this is exciting. And I also think they match up better against the Spurs. So that was a pleasant surprise as well. I thought it would be OKC.
I covered that series in 99.
Really?
Yeah. The Star covered the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I remember they got a few times.
It was not it wasn't an enjoyable finals. All the games were really low scoring. I remember the fifth game, the Spurs won it in 5. The fifth game was like 79-77 or something like that. It was just miserable.
Let me go on record. I mean, I could miss OTA day 5 if you need to send me to San Antonio Wednesday. So just keep me posted on that.
Rekindle a Star tradition.
Right.
So Vahe, where were you in 1969 when the Knicks won?
Yeah, where I was 8. I was in Austin, Texas, and I was in my first year or so of being a Longhorn fan during our 3-year span there. So I was about the same time of my life that Pete was becoming a fan. I was steeped in Texas stuff.
Well, one team that Pete knows as well, if not better, than the New York Knicks.
That's right. Hopefully.
The Kansas City Chiefs. And we have had an opportunity to see them up close last week, and that'll continue this week and into next with OTAs. Take us through the phases, Pete. What phase are they currently?
So this is technically phase 3 of the offseason, and that includes the on-field practices. Typically, the Chiefs would have 10, and we've written about this. I think Pete G did.
Pete Gradhoff.
Yeah, Pete G. He wrote, because of the World Cup, they shortened their voluntary portion of it. So it's only 6 voluntary practices, and that'll lead right into mandatory minicamp, which will be next week. That's the last time we'll see the Chiefs before they enter what will be training camp. We'll get to actually watch all 3 days. This week, we're watching, I believe it is day 5 of what will be 6 practices. And then it's that slow build. I mean, it is sort of this spring ball type of thing that the NFL has to give the team and especially the new players a base of what the offense and defense is going to look like. And then they restart their instruction almost as a refresher at the beginning of training camp. So this is important just to touch base. And afterwards, the emphasis from Andy Reid and the defensive coaching staff is going to be stay in shape. We're going to test you when you leave, and you better be in the same shape when you come back in 6 weeks.
The big news was the return of Patrick Mahomes. Vahe, that was it was cool to see him out there with drag brace on the left, on the left knee for the torn ACL and LCL, but just seeing him out there taking snaps and flinging the ball. I don't know if any of us expected to see him out there at this point when the injury occurred.
I certainly didn't. And, to your point, Blair, even measured as it was, seeing the brace so prominent on his leg, just flicking the ball the way he did. And of course, he only took part in the up to the 7-on-7 drills instead of the full 11-on-11, just so we didn't have any mishaps with, I think the way Andy Reid described it was an errant jet sweep, or some such taking him out. You don't want that. I certainly wouldn't have expected he'd be at this level. I still am unclear on what it's going to take for him to be game ready week one. And I think we all have different definitions of game ready. And it's interesting to try to probe Patrick, as a number of us did that day, on, so if you're not 100%, can you take care of yourself versus, he said this sort of Jedi mind trick he has where if he's playing, he is 100% because that's how he is. Like, he considers himself 100% of who he can be if he's playing. So it's interesting, right? I mean, and luckily I think it's out of his hands on determining his own health, because probably he would just say, well, I'm in.
Yeah, there's two parts of it for me. The first part is, I think, more looking at in the course of his career. And Vahe, you're great as far as the columns that you write on this guy. But every time we think that he's done having these larger than life, how are you doing this moments, he comes up with another one. 5 months and change from tearing your ACL and LCL, and he's able to do 7-on-7 work. And even in the individual drills, there is a little bit of a lateral and vertical movement on the leg that I was really impressed with. And then I think the second part of it, just to ground it, right? This is still a human being. I don't think he knows the timetable. Everyone's curious about this timetable, but what stood out to me is he said, we work in these 1 to 2 week checkpoints.
Yeah.
And so he won't know until he gets to that 2 weeks from now. Where is he at? All right, let's work on another 2 weeks. I think the goal is still be full, whatever that means, during training camp, be 100% ready for week one, but they won't really actually know that. Like, they're not hiding anything. That
Right.
They actually know they're going to see how he is at each part of, what are these, they call them a couple times checkpoints.
It's interesting about the checkpoints thing, because you assume that as it was structured, the checkpoints sort of work backwards from, when they want them to be ready, right? The checkpoints, I gather anyway, are established based on getting him ready for week one. At least that's how I took it to be. So he's advancing against that front. I don't think the checkpoints are just, every 2 weeks you should be here, and if you're not, we're holding you back for that week. I didn't get enough of that to understand exactly how that's designed.
It seems like the next one is cutting and moving and scrambling and just being able to not take a big lick and get re-injured.
One other thing I just want to jump into really quick, because I was struck by this, he has done so many superhuman things. I mean, whether it's how he plays or whether he, regenerates his limbs, whatever it is he can do, that I do think we forget, it is a grind even for him. He has to choose to put all he can into it. And it's his natural inclination, sure. But anybody going through rehab of a major injury like this has days where he doesn't want to do it, or she doesn't want to do it. And I just kind of appreciate about him that it's also true that he's a mortal doing mortal things to get back. Like, it's not just he snaps his fingers and I'm Patrick Mahomes and of course I'll just be ready. I don't know, it struck me the other day in his honesty about that.
Well, that's when he credited his team, right? Julie Fremeyer and Bobby Stroop and even Brittany.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are when he doesn't feel like, maybe 100% in terms of energy and effort toward rehabbing, he leans on his team to help him out. I liked what Andy Reid said too about when he was asked about Patrick Mahomes' schedule, and Reid said, "Whose schedule?"
Yeah.
That's who.
Yeah,
He's
who
on
made
his
that
own
schedule?
Yeah, who made it for him? So the other thing I thought was really interesting was him suggesting that somehow this is helping him. If not, he's he's a game. He can slow his feet and be a little bit different quarterback than he has been.
Every year we ask Patrick what he's working on, and usually it's a variation of the same thing. And it's funny because this is the greatest NFL player of this generation, and it's like, what really do you need to work on? But he often mentions pocket presence and trusting the pocket and trusting his reads and the footwork that goes into that. And what he was essentially saying is, in 7-on-7, I have no choice. I am not allowed right now to scramble out of the pocket. I have to go through my reads. And so it quite literally is forcing him to maybe get a little bit better than that. And there is a case, like if that is legitimate and this is really helping him do that, this probably came at the perfect time in his career, because when you're approaching 30 and you do have this dual threat ability, not to say that that's going to go away completely, but as you get older, you're probably more apt to stay in the pocket and avoid putting yourself at risk for those type of hits. And so, like his career seemingly has went, there always seems to be a silver lining with this kid, and I think you're getting another version of that.
I think what I totally agree with you, and it's really interesting about how this will be, a phase of his evolution, right? One way or another, he's got to evolve. But I also think it's kind of a fascinating reminder of his mindset, right? Like, okay, I'm completely limited in this. How do I make it fuel for me? And how do I funnel this into something that's positive and better? And I just think it speaks to the power of his mind. Like I think his mind really works that way.
Something you said a moment ago, Vahe, that just triggered something. How old is Patrick now?
He's 30 now. He'll be 31 in September, I believe.
When he suffered his, what we thought at the time was the catastrophic knee injury at Denver, where the kneecap was turned sideways on his, and he returned in 2.5 months, or 2.5 weeks. I'm sorry, 2.5 weeks. He was 23, 24.
Yeah, that was 2019.
Yeah.
So 24, right? It would have been in October of 19. Does that sound right? Maybe it's November.
Hadn't, no kids yet. Just a different kind of body than there is now. Not to put a damper on the recovery time period here, but just keep in mind that he's a different age.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, I think two things, the parallels that, and maybe this is worth examining more at some point. As far as I recall this, you guys might remember it better, but one of the keys to that dislocated kneecap was they did instantaneous snap it back in, like on the field. And what was one of the keys to this knee injury so far? They operated the next day. I mean, he was, at least as I understood it, I think he was rehabbing, Tuesday morning after the injury was it a Saturday game? So I don't know what that parallel exactly is, other than he's getting the best care possible and he's into it right away. But to your point, Blair, it is a different body at this point and different injury. We'll see how it all works out. I guess none of us are thinking he's going to be not able to go pretty early in the season, right? I mean, is there any scenario where he's not starting by October?
Man, I'm not an athletic trainer, but I have to imagine that he's, I know that Andy Reid said the schedule thing, but ahead of schedule, he was moving well. If he had no, and that's one thing, because these practices are just open to the media, we get one a week right now, we can tell you, if he had no brace on, I don't know if you would have been able to tell that he was ever injured, which is incredible 5 months later.
Even the way you released the ball and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no problem with the arm strength at all. I mean, there was no impact, and he was accurate. And, there was a couple catches, and I'm sure we'll get into some more, but like Xavier Worthy made, where you can still see he's got the zip, they're connecting. He's staying in tune with his receivers. I just think that part is incredible. Now, again, like I said, not an athletic trainer. We don't know what that means for, what would be the timetable, but I got to imagine they're very happy with where he is right now.
I think he's back week 1.
Same. Yeah, I agree.
Do you think he's back week 1 and you feel like he can do all things Patrick? Or
I think he could be Patrick enough.
Patrick enough. Yeah.
Whether that's good enough against a team that played in the AFC Championship game a year ago and now has 3 straight wins over the Chiefs, the Denver Broncos. We'll see. But I think he's back week 1. Back on SportsBeat KC with Star columnist Vahe Gregorian and beat writer Pete Sweeney on Blair Kerkhoff. So that was kind of the good news, Patrick Mahomes, but there was some not as good news last week when we learned that Rashee Rice was not present at training camp or at OTAs. It turns out, he wouldn't have participated anyway because we learned that he had surgery on his knee, a little cleanup as it was described. But that's not why he was unavailable to the Chiefs. He was in jail serving his 29 of his 30 days in jail as part of the conditions of his parole for the 2024 car accident that he was in Dallas, his role in that. Because he had tested positive, one of the conditions of the parole was not to, you're going to get drug tested. He failed a drug test because of THC. And so that was not great news for the Chiefs last week. How do you think the Chiefs handled that? What Andy Reid called it a life lesson. I thought maybe that wasn't the way to go.
Well, what's interesting about that is, and I remember thinking of this in real time as Andy was saying it, I don't know if Andy used these exact words before, but it was kind of a rerun on the life lesson was about 3 lessons ago. And it feels like a loop on this guy. And, there's a lot going on here, right? I mean, it was 2 seasons ago, it's 2024 season when he had the collision with Patrick and got hurt, right? Mm-hmm. At that point,
After a terrific rookie year,
so terrific that Brett Veach told us before the Super Bowl that year that the plan had been that we're building around Rashee Rice. It's, we're transitioning to Rashee Rice from Travis, basically. And so think about the investment they were thinking about with him and all that's happened since. And now, I mean, Sam McDowell has written about this a time or two and is really, I think, describe the essence of it. How can you depend on this guy? And I think that's something that the Chiefs have to be very conscious of, and yet I don't know what exactly that translates to. I mean, of course they want to put him to use and get what they can from him, but can they say, well, he's the guy we build around? I don't think you can.
There's a lot of elements to this, and it's tough. I mean, you just have to call it like you see it sometimes, and not an exact parallel, but there's like a little bit boy who cried wolf that happened with this. Like, it's just how many times is Rashee Rice going to put the Chiefs in this situation where they have to answer questions and he's not even there to answer them? Like, Andy Reid's in a tough spot because I think obviously what I drew from the press conference was they're planning to stick with him, and in a way it's like, well, what else are we going to say that, he has to learn from this? And, once again, or we're behind, to an extent, we're behind him, life lesson, that type of thing. But is this the last chance? Because, right, it would be like a 4th strike. And then you go to the other side of it, too, with I'm not 100% sold based upon what we heard that the Chiefs don't think he's going to get suspended once again. In the details of it, the NFL no longer punishes for marijuana. It's legal in many states, Missouri included, but this was a very clear parameter of his parole. You cannot partake in THC, and it was there, and he did, and that's why the punishment and going to jail happened early. It's just, how does the NFL handle this? It's tough enough when the NFL puts a suspension down on a certain player, and then that another player does the exact same thing, because the games aren't always the same. I mean, it seems like to an extent in the suspension realm, they make it up as they go along. It's even more impossible to know what they're going to do when there is an unprecedented situation like this where, we no longer punish for THC, but he did violate this and embarrass us, and the shield or whatever you want to call it once again. So I'm unsure as to what is going to happen as far as another penalty.
That's 100% the crux of it. That's really interesting way to boil it down. I mean, it's are they judging, penalizing him for something that's no longer illegal to them versus it's the parameters and clear parameters. Like that's what you can't do if you want under these conditions.
And he was already punished for this incident with the 6-game suspension, but now it's, what does the NFL do? And there, again, no precedent to even make a guess, because there is no precedent.
Just lousy judgment once again.
Yeah.
On his part.
Yeah.
Terrible judgment.
And look, this is maybe harsh and blunt, but it's true. All the dominoes from this have fallen from, that awful episode of the driving 120 miles per hour. And my single takeaway then and single takeaway now was him leaving with his friends, leaving the scene with no idea if anybody had died. Just, I hate to focus so much on that, but it feels like that body language, that way of looking at things has persisted.
And we had video of that.
Yeah.
It's so bothersome.
Yeah.
That moment.
Yeah.
From a practical standpoint, from the wide receiver room, Pete, what does it, what does it mean if Rashee Rice? First of all, we started this portion of the conversation is he had knee surgery a few days before, starting his jail time. So we don't know what kind of care he's getting in there. Andy Reid suggested that that's not an issue, that he's rehabbing, and but he doesn't get out until June. I think it's June 16th. This is the day he gets out. What does it mean for the Chiefs and the wide receiver group?
Yeah, it's just so surreal hearing Andy Reid say Rick's been in touch, and it's like in your mind you're picturing like, is he on a payphone? Like what? Is Rick going to jail?
Can he visit?
Right,
And sign in.
But
and workout time in the yard.
Regardless of whatever exotic thoughts and almost amusing, and there's no other way to really put it in a way of how they're figuring this out. The underlying message was that they believe he'll be ready for the start of training camp. When this news kind of came out, it sounded like from the agent side that they were saying 2 months. Maybe it's 2 months if you have proper care. They did have the surgery at a certain point because they thought he would be, fully recovered for camp. And so it's another weird wrinkle in a long, winding road of a story surrounding Rice. And to put a bow on it too, this is his contract year. Let's say this is finally the end of the off the field issues, and he goes out, is healthy, plays 17 games, and from what the Chiefs really believe he can be, has 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns. What do you do then? Does he want to sign with Kansas City? Does Kansas City want to sign him? Is he going to go for the highest bidder? What does that market look like? There's so many more questions that go along with how this plays out.
I think the Chiefs would take a 1,400-yard season from any wide receiver in a heartbeat.
But then you're faced after all of this, and let's say he does have that clean year. It's like, are we going to make this player on a 3 or 4 year deal the richest player at his position in the league if he does go and do that? So it is fascinating in a way to watch.
Yeah.
How about the room as a whole with Xavier Worthy and Tyquan Thornton and Jalen Broyles and Cyrus Allen and Nico Remigio? What are we looking at from a production standpoint? Is this an average receiver room? Is it an above average one? What do you think?
Not to flip right back to Rashee Rice, but if Rashee Rice is what I just described, it's a pretty good receiver room. I don't know if Xavier Worthy has to be that guy again. Tyquan Thornton was on the street, as they put it, a couple of seasons ago. He really looked and had the flashes last year, and during his brief free agent stint, he was saying that he wanted the targets. So I don't think he's coming back to the Chiefs if he's not going to be more of a focal point. From our practice look, Cyrus Allen, I thought looked good. I also thought that Jalen Royals had that dynamic catch from Mahomes in 7-on-7. So we only get the 1 day a week, and we are so early here, but better to see that than not to see it. And so I think this could be a bounce back year for Jalen Royals. Nico, they love as more of that special teams asset that can play if someone needs to tie their shoes, that type of thing. I think it's a decent receiver room. I think because of some of the questions surrounding Rice, you do take a peek at that free agent market. Juju Smith-Schuster, we thought might come back, just signed with the New York Giants. He's out of the picture, but there are bigger marquee names like a Stephon Diggs, like a Deebo Samuel. But, again, not to belabor the point, but like, you got to bring in Stephon Diggs with some of his off the field stuff and add him to that room when he just is off a 1,000-yard season. But I think you have to think about all of that. So a lot of this is on Rice, but I think if Rice is fine, which could be a big if, the rest of the room makes for a solid wideout room. But again, just the constant question.
I like that thought about if Rice is who he can be, we've seen it. It sort of reorders the rest of the room in a way that I think becomes, I think the term you used was solid. I say, so the overall then becomes, I think, average to better, a little better than average, depending again on the growth of a couple of these guys. I wonder if you guys have a feeling for what really held Royals back last year, because this was a guy that they didn't even play in mop-up time at the end of last year.
It had to have been
playbook,
lack of confidence in Andy, or thinking that he knew the plays. I also think, from a pure talent standpoint, at that stage he was just fourth in the order anyway. But I think your point is key. He wasn't even playing in garbage time, so there might have been a disconnect as far as understanding what, as often described as one of the more complex playbooks. And
well, I wasn't, and it really was just the one catch, but I was intrigued by that. It wasn't the catch I remember seeing him make last year, and I probably just didn't see it. But looked like a guy that belonged on that play.
That would be a tremendous, tremendous break for Kansas City if he's able to bounce back and be a player that is going to demand time on the field.
Do you think they have a better idea of a guy like him than we might guess right now? Like, do you think they're like, oh, we see he's, I don't know. It's just interesting to picture what they're projecting.
I thought the Allen pick was interesting because obviously they like the player, but naturally he's vying for that fourth receiver spot, quote unquote, and that pushes guys. You had an opportunity last year, you weren't really able to get on the field. Guess what? We drafted somebody now. So you going to be pushed down the depth chart, or are you going to show something and be that guy for us?
We're recording this on Monday afternoon, just a couple of hours, I guess, after news broke that Myles Garrett had been traded from the Cleveland Browns to the LA Rams, and you think, oh man, out of the conference. But the Chiefs don't play the Browns this year, scheduled to play the Browns. They are scheduled to play at the LA Rams. So you talk about the Rams going all in on the McDuffie trade, and of course Jalen Watson, of course, from the Chiefs, and Myles Garrett. This is mindful of the year the Rams won the Super Bowl a few years ago, but led by Aaron Donald, and of course Matthew Stafford with the MVP that year, and was the MVP last year. So another big news for the LA Rams, pushing all their chips in, it seems to me, for this season.
How's that feel?
Yep. All right, great conversation as always with Vahe Gregorian and Pete Sweeney. The first World Cup team to announce Kansas City as its base camp was the first to arrive. Argentina touched down on Sunday for what the defending World Cup champs hope will be a long and successful stay here. Argentina's first group stage game in Kansas City on June 16th is against Algeria. Its next two games are in Arlington, Texas. If the bracket falls right, Argentina could return to Kansas City for a quarterfinal on July 11th. Wouldn't that be something? Also, look for the Netherlands to land in Kansas City a week from today. They'll be training at the Kansas City Currents facility and will play a group stage game here on June 25th. The World Cup is upon us. Here's a term we haven't used around here in a few years: super regional. The NCAA baseball tournament is approaching its second weekend. 16 teams remain in the field, and Kansas is among them. The Jayhawks went 3-0 at the regional played at their home ballpark last season, beating Arkansas twice along the way. And get this, KU will host a super regional. They'll take on their old conference rival Oklahoma in a best-of-3 series that begins Saturday. Check the Star for those details. It's one of 8 super regionals, and the winners advance to the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska. And a shout out to the Johnson County Community College baseball team for blasting its way to the National Junior College Baseball Championship, and I mean blasting. The Cavaliers walloped 219 home runs as a team this season, setting a record across all levels of college baseball. Their 67-3 record also set a record for victories in a season for junior colleges. Congrats to head coach Eric Horner and the team from College Boulevard. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC producers, Gabriella Lacey and Suzanne Hogan, and to our editors, Hannah Wise, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Let us know what you thought of the show by leaving a rating and review. Those are always appreciated. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.